And a big welcome to the UFC, to a couple of debuting featherweights. First out of France, we have the Jaguar, William Gomis. He's going to be taking on Netherlands' own Jarno Errens. He's going to look to follow in the footsteps of like Alistair Overeem, Bas Rutten, Jermaine Durandamy. Matt, can you name any other fighters that are Dutch? I mean, Gegard Mousasi, former middleweight champ.
That's immediately who came to mind. I just keep on thinking, I am the Reem.
Yeah, and horse meat. But for Jarno Errens, great opportunity coming in on short notice. This fight really thrown together at the last second. And if we look at it and start off with William Gomis, I mean, he's a guy out of the MMA factory. So you're going to get those recognizable names like Nassourdine, Imavov, Cyril Gane that are also on this card. Maybe even Ailin Baudot, if you want to go back that far. That guy had an awful UFC run. But if you do focus on it for Gomis, he was actually booked back in June to take on a guy whose 32-fight win streak was one of the most legendary runs in bantamweight history, a guy who had 2 wins over Uriah Faber for the belt, a guy who from 2012 to 2014, Joe Rogan probably dreamt about at night. I'm talking about Renan Barão. William Gomis was supposed to take on Renan Barão at Aris FC number 7. Unfortunately, Barão couldn't make the walk, so Gomis took on Jose Marcos on that one. But Matt, when I did really kind of focus in on William Gomis, I didn't know a damn thing about him. I had seen that he'd fought with Cage Warriors, he'd fought a little bit with Aris, so you expect that you're going to get a pretty good prospect coming in at the age of 25. So got to really do the deep dive on this guy. Found an interview that he did before that Aris 7 fight by Denis Hadzovic over on his YouTube channel. So for those francophones that are out there, maybe check that one out. But he kind of touched on the fact that he was really into athletics when he was a kid, but when he was in around the age of 13, he went to do a 100-meter dash and he hurt his leg.
Oh no.
So he had to find something new. So his friend said, hey, I'm doing Sonda. You want to do Sonda? And out of that, a champion was born. Junior national champ with France in Sonda. Parlayed that one into MMA. His uncle's actually Gregory Babin. And if you don't know Gregory Babin, he's on a 7-fight win streak right now. Just knocked out Mike Shipman in May. So pretty good lineage to have in the family. Another good article that I read was with Eclectic Magazine, if you want to check that one out, on the background of William Gomis. But if you do look at just his record, the ones and the zeros, he does have a debuting loss to Saladin Palnas, you know, KSW 2-time champion of featherweight, so that one's all right. He's got a loss to Morgan Charrière, you know, your Cage Warriors former champ at featherweight, where he got caught in a heel hook and then his knee kind of popped, or his ankle popped. So
like Danilo Gallinari in a FIBA game.
He did have to take about a year away after that one. But Matt, if you do look overall at everything for William Gomis from fight 1 to fight 2, not necessarily the same fighter every time. Like in the Jose Marcos fight where he took that one again on short notice, it was supposed to be Barão. He just kind of kept his hands really low, waited to bait in his opponent. Then he tried to land that left hook counter, tried to land his kicks to the body, one of his best parts of his game. But again, in certain other fights, he's a little bit more aggressive. He tends to also really like to grapple for a guy whose background is in Sonda. So what did you make of William Gomis watching the tape?
I really like some of the things that I saw, but he does seem to have one fatal flaw in his style, and that's that he does tend to tense up when guys rush him. He is a really good fighter when he's the one leading the dance, when he's the one setting the pace, and he has really nice kicks. They are kind of slapping kicks. They're not necessarily like one-shot knockout kicks like you see from a guy like an Adesanya or like a Leon Edwards, of course, over Kamaru Usman. They are more accumulation, more than just sheer power, but he just throws a really nice kick to the leg, to the body. He's very fast with his kicks too, and he can double and triple up on them, almost like you see other fighters do with a jab. The thing about him though is he does try to do a lot of like trip takedowns from the clinch when fighters do rush him, because he doesn't necessarily have great boxing. He has good boxing and good hands, but again, boxing as a term isn't just, oh, do you have good power on your feet? It does have to do with some of the skill sets that you employ with your 2 hands, and that's the thing with Gomis. He does sort of tense up immediately, and then if you are fighting someone who's a good boxer, like Errens is, I could see him being able to get on the inside of his range, be able to deflect some of those kicks just by being so close to him. And then if William doesn't have much of an answer with his hands, I think he could struggle in that one range. But that is the interesting thing about William in this matchup. He's really good at long range with his kicks, and then when the fight does get into that close range and sort of the boxing in the clinch, he will go for a lot of takedowns, which are weird because he's got decent control, but he is light on top. Guys can pop up. He'll try to kind of jump to the back sort of haphazardly, and he can make kind of rookie mistakes, if we're being honest, in that part of his game, even though it does seem to be a well that he likes to go to quite often. So I think this will be a really interesting fight, especially if Jarno can get on the inside, because let's say he is having a lot of success with his own boxing, and he's the one who can dictate whether or not the fight's on the feet or on the mat. I think this could be one of those like fight of the night, fight opening fights on the card.
It is a little bit of an odd one from Gomis. Again, billed as a Sonda fighter. If he's on the reverse, if he's backing up, he really does like to land a lot of those counters, but he does do this thing where if he's pushing off and if he's trying to close the distance, he'll load up, kind of like the Darren Till load up, and then he tries to land a right hook, and it's kind of an interesting one out of a guy that's not necessarily known as a power puncher. He's more of a death by 1,000 cuts type of fighter, and if you watch his fight against Marcos, at the end, it was the weakest TKO I've ever seen. He's looking off in the distance, just like punching, like, I better put my time in. This is the way that this fight's going. So if you do look at it for him, again, a little bit of a well-rounded skill set, little complementary is, kind of the wrestling to the grappling. His ground game's a little bit of a different story, but if we do focus on the fighter out of the Netherlands in Jarno Errens, really, really fun on the rewatch. And if you look at it for him, he's been very, very active of late. And again, the sexiest of record on the 5-on-in, 3-1-1, not necessarily, but if you do look at the level of competition that he's taken on, he is, of course, 1-1 against Mert Özyıldırım for the title over with NFC, that organization, and he did lose his second to last fight. The judges all scored at 50-45 against him. He struggled in some of the wrestling exchanges, but if you do look at it for Jarno Errens, he does have a background in judo, and you do see that in a lot of his fights. His last fight out with Brave CF, I don't know if you saw it, that crazy like hip toss throw that he had. Like, he really does have it going on with his judo. But when I watch a Jarno Errens fight, he really does have some good offensive boxing. He really likes to push the pace. He's not a guy that relies a lot on his kicks, even though he does kind of stand ahead. He looks like he's going to throw a lot of leg kicks. He doesn't necessarily do that. But when I did kind of watch a lot of these guys' tape, when I look at Jarno Errens and I look at a fight that William Gomis had in the past that kind of matches up, Gomis' fight against Harilla over with Cage Warriors, Harilla looked like Sean Strickland, but with none of the volume. He just kept walking him down and getting really happy, and then doing nothing when he closed the distance. Gomis was able to figure that out, land the kicks, land some of his boxing from long range. But for Jarno Errens, Matt, again, I was very, very impressed by his boxing and his forward pressure in a lot of his fights.
And these guys are both massive for the weight class, too. Like,
Yeah.
if they do stay around for a long time in the featherweight division, I do think that they could both have a decent level of success. Like, this would main event a Contender Series card. I feel quite comfortable saying that, because I do think both these fighters are going to show promise at the UFC level. I'm not going to predict that they're both going to have, 15, 20 fight UFC careers, but I do think the winner of this is facing a difficult enough opponent, being either guy, to where it gets their career off to a really good start. I just like William Gomis' ability to win in multiple different ranges in this fight. I don't necessarily predict a finish in this one because both guys move quite well on the feet, but I do think the kicks and the punches of Gomis are going to start to accumulate as this fight goes on. Now, if Errens can get on the inside as this fight goes late, let's say the volume of Gomis does start to falter, just because he does rely a lot on his kicks, and of course those do require a lot of energy to throw, then I could see a world where Jarno Errens can sort of slip in at the end of this fight and have some success. But I really do like the game of William Gomis at only 25 years of age too. And let's think about both these guys. They're both younger than 30, and it's not really that often we see promising people making their UFC debuts under 30.
Younger than 30, good level competition, championship experience by Errens. Like, this is a perfect fight, and a couple of guys that, I think they're going to stick around. If they can pick up fights in the States, that'd be perfect for their careers. If you look at it for Jarno Errens and you want to go back and watch a highlight reel fight, watch him fight Max Koga, where he lands the uppercut and he's already dead on his feet, and then he hits him with the left hand and completely floors him. That was really, really awful. If we do look at the odds for this fight, I actually laughed before we taped this one. I went, are you serious? Gomis open a -225, -210 right now. For Errens, open a +190, +170. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. They're a surprise to us, there to you. Again, I was so surprised that Gomis was more than a 2-1 favorite. So I'll say Gomis over under 65%.
I'll say under.
You're going to say under. It's way over. So 503 total votes, 91% Gomis, 43% by decision, 47% by knockout. For the 9% that didn't watch Aaron's fights, 51% by decision, and 23% by knockout. Again, this all really does surprise me, but you're going with Gomis here?
That's the thing. I don't necessarily agree with where the odds are, but again, if I'm just looking at this fight as to who can win the fight in specific areas, I like Gomis at like kickboxing range on the outside. I like him up close if he does have to use some of that clinch work just to get takedowns. Again, I don't think he's going to be able to control Errens for a bunch of minutes on the mat, but they're good enough to at least win moments in the judges' eyes, and I do feel like with his volume, with his cardio, and with his takedown ability, that he is a safe pick in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, on the short notice draw against Marcos, where he's supposed to take on Brow, he wasn't high volume. Which was kind of odd for him.
But he has been traditionally, which was odd to see. Right?
Yeah, he has been traditionally, but he was more hip to wrestle, which was a little bit of a surprise. I think wrestling against Jarno Errens is probably going to be a mistake. You look at his judo pedigree, you look at the fact that in certain fights, he's able to control on the mat. In that fight against Mert Özildirim in the rematch, he wasn't able to do it. And he also did get dropped in the second round of that fight. I didn't mention that when he got dropped by a left hook really quick, and that was kind of it. I like Jarno Errens with the boxing. I like him in tight range. I like the knees out of William Gomis when it does get to that clinch position, but I do favor Errens in that. So this fight thrown in on short notice, I think Errens isn't a bad shot as an underdog in this matchup, especially where the odds are at right now. So I'm going to go with the Netherlands, Jarno Errens in this matchup. Matt going with the Jaguar, William Gomis. This is the fight that I got most excited about out of any of these debuting prospects. So if you can go back and watch some of the tape study, I know it's our job and it's not yours, but please do, because it was a lot of fun on the rewatch. We get some great fights on this card. 2 top middleweights in the co-main event, 2 top heavyweights in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.